now return to Mind Your Own Business on DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines. Here are your hosts, Nicole Jacinto and Nikki De Vega.
Okay, welcome back, folks. I am Nicole Jacinto and I'm with Attorney Carlo Marquez today. Thank you, Attorney Carlo. Attorney Carlo and I just wanted to take the opportunity earlier to ask more questions about Bulacan because it's on everyone's mind.
Yes.
And we have our RJ reporter there, June Sese, and we were able to talk to Vice Governor Daniel Fernando. Thank you for your time and thank you for giving us this update, what's going on there. Everyone's worried about that part of the country and other parts as well. So anyway, let's get back to other business though. Attorney Marquez, Attorney Carlo Marquez. Okay, let me just ask you briefly, no, because it's also in the news today. For example, not just today, it's been in the news for a couple of weeks now. For example, this strike with Palea. You were saying earlier that some cases are, you cited the PRC or as an example of a government agency that can try a case before it even gets to the courts proper, or what we think of as the courts. This dispute with Palea and Palic, how will it be tried? Like for example, okay, go ahead.
Well, in such particular case, because the way I understood it, the Paleas claims against the Philippine Airlines. So in that instance, their labor claims should be filed before the National Labor Relations Commission. In such instance, it would be the labor arbiter would hear their case. And then if ever the decision is not favorable to one party, the other party can file an appeal with the National Labor Relations Commission.
So this goes on at the NLRC. So it's another example of a trial going on by a government, conducted by a government agency. Okay, sorry.
Then after that, it would then be the final arbiter is the Supreme Court. So just because it was filed before a government agency doesn't mean that it would not reach the regular courts. In such instance, it would be the Supreme Court who would finally decide on who has the better right in that particular case.
Okay, so see, that's just another example there. But okay, those are that's an example of a big case that's in the news. But let's go back to, we were talking about criminal action and civil action, and we mentioned BP 22, which we talked about before. But let's just touch on it again. What exactly is BP 22? It's actually one of the most common things that comes up when you conduct business. And this is you file it as a criminal.
Criminal complaint.
BP 22 is a criminal complaint. Let's make that clear. Okay.
So BP 22 is a violation of the bouncing checks law. You can be prosecuted for this criminal offense if you issue a check or make or draw a check and such check bounces. When you speak of bounce, what it means is that the check will not be honored. Meaning if there is a particular amount stated in that check and then it is presented before a bank so that it can be withdrawn, the bank would dishonor such check, saying that there are no sufficient funds in the account in which such check is deposited or where it is supposed to be withdrawn.
Have you seen cases like this already? Because I think maybe for a lot of us, we tend to give a chance if there's a bouncing check and give the person another chance and another. I mean, usually when you file BP 22, it's already because it's been 3 bouncing checks and how long? Have you seen many cases like this go to court?
Go to court. Yes, actually. When the check bounces, the court, the bank gives the issuer of that check notice, and the issuer is given 5 days within which to make an arrangement with the party presenting the check so that it can be settled. So it is only after that instance that it was not settled that the complainant or the party who is suing for BP 22 can actually file a case for BP 22. So that period of time.
Sorry, go ahead.
That period of time should have lapsed first.
And I know a lot of us are very patient. You know, the Filipinos are very patient. As Filipinos, we're like, okay, it's been 10 bouncing checks. Then that's the time that we sue for BP. We sue under the criminal action, criminal complaint BP 22. What is the bottom line here? What's the punishment if they're found guilty of violating that law?
Actually, before we go there, I just like to stress that there is still hope, even if, for example, a criminal case for BP22 was already filed in court.
Okay.
Kasi before the trial proper starts in court, the parties are given the chance to again settle out the problem. Even before, even in the fiscal, in the prosecutor's level, the prosecutor would usually ask, is there a way that this case can be settled? And of course, the parties would manifest their intent to settle the case amicably.
Yeah, because if you have no ill intentions really, and you can pay, and you want to avoid a court case or being criminally liable, you'll pay. And then if you're the one suing, you want to get paid.
Yes.
So
Actually, the person who's claiming based on the check just wants to get his money, right? So usually they'd forgo the interests that are, or the penalties that would accompany the obligation of the party. So there is still hope. Even if there's a BP22 case filed against you, the important thing is that you talk to the complainant, because usually these are businessmen who are thinking in terms of how much are they gonna spend on a particular course of action, and usually if it would go into litigation, it would cost a lot. So it would be for a businessman, it would actually be better to just settle the problem. But
so you get some of your money back at least, and also for the other person.
Actually, the principal, because you have to remember that it's an obligation. So we should always honor our obligations.
This is where we really run into trouble in business and in other parts of life also, when we don't honor our obligations. Because you agreed to something, it's a contract, whether it's, whether you gave your word, which is very important, especially to people like me, or you put it down on paper.
Yeah. So
what's the bottom line though for BP22?
BP22.
Let's say it goes to trial and everything, and then they're found guilty. What is the bottom line for the perpetrator of the crime? No, just kidding.
Well, there's actually this ruling that, for example, it would depend on the amount of the check.
Okay.
They could actually pay a fine for the violation of BP22. So in that case, that would be the penalty for them.
Okay, all right. Now, how about, we actually only have a few minutes left. So let's go straight to civil action, because we gave an example earlier. You were talking about the notion of trial and litigation, and how this can happen also in, it's not what everybody thinks, but you will come across it in business. For example, you mentioned the PRC being able to revoke the licenses of certain people whom they licensed, certain individuals whom they licensed, if it falls under their jurisdiction, and that's already also considered trial and litigation. We brought up the example of Palea and Philippine Airlines, and how this is something that the NLRC has to examine and determine, and then the final arbiter will still be the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And then the criminal action, we talked about probable cause, prosecutor finding for probable cause. Criminal action, BP22, most common example, classic example, as you put it earlier.
Yes.
And a lot of people come across this, that's the bouncing checks. What about a civil action? How do we go about filing a civil action, let's say for breach of contract?
Well, in that case, you file a civil complaint. You file it before the court wherein you reside, or where the defendant resides. So you have two options, either where you reside or where the defendant resides. And then before, you have to pay the filing fees as well. So before filing the complaint, you have the complaint assessed before the office of the clerk of court, and then they will determine the amount which you will pay as filing fees. And the bottom line for that particular civil action would depend on your prayer. When you speak of the prayer, you state there the actual damages which you incurred, moral damages if ever, or exemplary damages as well. So it would really depend. But in such instance, the amount that would really be high would be the actual damages. For example, you have a contract, and because of the other party's breach, you incurred such amount of losses, for example, then that would be classified as your actual damages.
That's your actual damages.
Yes.
Okay. And sometimes they can put penalties. They can.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be liquidated damages.
Okay.
Like in short, just so they would not have to prove damages, like for example moral damages, you just put there the liquidated damages. That would be the amount which you agreed to pay if ever there is a breach
And
of our obligation.
businesses and corporations or business entities, do they go and file civil actions? Have you seen this happen?
Business entities like
Yes.
partnerships or corporations.
Yes.
Yes. We have to remember that corporations are also juridical entities. So since they are juridical entities, they have the capacity to sue. They have that legal personality as well.
Yeah, meaning the whole corporation is looked upon as a legal person,
Yes.
so that corporation can sue another one in court for civil action.
Yes. But in that particular instance, they'd be represented by a natural person.
Yes, a natural
Because-
person. That's right.
Because of course they can't appear before the court as a juridical entity.
That's
so there would be a
right.
representative.
That's right. Okay.
But
yeah.
usually the other person will just be authorized by special power of attorney.
Okay,
Yes.
to represent the whole
Yes.
company or okay. I had one more question for you. You were saying earlier when you file a civil action, it has to be in the place of where you reside or where the person you're suing resides. In terms of business entities, where do you file this? Is it where your business is located or where their business is how does it
the
usually
principal
work?
place of business.
Of the one suing?
Yes.
Okay, so you file, so it's still like your residence,
Yeah.
so the principal place of business. So
Either of the, for example, if the defendant is a corporation, then it would be the principal place of business of the defendant corporation.
okay, and we have to remember that word principal place of business because if you have even if you have branches
Yeah, it
or
can't be-
or
it can't be the
satellite
basis,
offices, it has to be you have to file it
Yeah,
in
you
the,
would it would depend on what you filed before the Securities and Exchange Commission. What's stated in the document as your principal place of business.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have any parting shots, Attorney Marquez? Anything you want to remind people about or talk to them about, especially when it comes to trial and litigation?
Well, I just like to say that for you to avoid inconvenience, which is part of trial and litigation, you should just honor your obligation to make life simple for everyone. So just stick to your word. I know that during these times it's not common already. That's why to honor your word, that's why I have written contracts. But let's just stick to the basics. If you say something, if you're gonna do something, you have to do it because that's what you promised the other party.
Exactly. And if for some reason you can't perform, you have to have a dialogue and explain
Yes.
why.
It's actually better to communicate with the other party. I know sometimes it just takes a bit of time before the other party succumbs into forgiving you for whatever you did. So
And one thing I like about your law office is that you don't just simply tell people to go to trial, to go to
Yes.
court already. You really try to fix things first between parties and at that level. So again, for the listeners out there, can you just give them the address again of NDV law offices and your telephone numbers?
okay, the office address of Nicolas and De Vega Law Offices is at 16th floor, AIC Burgundy, Empire Tower. It's along ADB Avenue. It's behind Robinson's Galleria. So for the numbers, you have 470-6130. And I can remember the other address, the telephone numbers.
I can actually hold on. Just hang on a minute. So just repeat that address for them, and then can you say the address again, Attorney Marquez?
It's at 16th floor, Suite 1607, AIC Burgundy Empire Tower, ADB Avenue, Ortigas, Pasig City.
Okay. And then
For the
your telephone numbers are the telephone numbers of Nicolas and De Vega Law Offices are 470-6130 and 470-6126.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for joining me today, Attorney Marquez.
It's a pleasure.
it's also my pleasure, and you can see the people that Nikki works with, and all of you. I'm looking forward to having your whole roster come over and help us discuss these issues that we have to come across when we do business, or actually even if you're just going about your life, you come across these things, taking care of the business at home, the business with family, and then actual business. And it's good for people to know, for people out there to know the law and how it relates to business. So thanks for being here today. And I like what you said, simply honor your word.
Yes.
And honor your obligations, and you'll avoid a lot of pain and cost when it comes to yes. All right. So thank you for being with us here today. That was Attorney Carlo Marquez, sitting in for Attorney Nikki De Vega here on Mind Your Own Business. I'm still Nicole Jacinto, and we're still helping you figure out how to mind your own business. Anyway, stay tuned for Jerry Cornejo and Not Necessarily the News. He's up next. We'll be back on Wednesday. Hope you tune in then and maybe give us a call. Who will you be sending?
For Wednesday?
Surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise. Okay. All right. Okay. But we'll know the topics beforehand. Okay. So thanks for joining us today, folks. Stay tuned to DZRJ 8:10 a.m., the voice of the Philippines.